We are all communicators, right? We love to communicate. That's what we do. It's really an honor to get to teach you about a topic that's important to me, that I enjoy, because I respect all of you. I know a lot of you, I know that you bring some amazing talents to this room. This room is just like brimming with energy and enthusiasm and intelligence and knowledge, and I always come away from these meetings feeling excited about what I do for a living. I've done different things throughout the course of my career, but translating and interpreting is uniquely fulfilling in that I always come away from interpreting knowing that I've made a difference in someone's life, somebody in crisis who really needs me and can't function, who can't get justice without me. I'm able to open the doors of justice to them. Or with translation, you know, you're not that closely connected to the people that you're working for, but then when you see where your translations are used and how they make a difference in the people's lives who need them, it's just fulfilling. And I think we can all feel good about what we do for a living. And if you're just getting into it, if you're coming from another career, a lot of us move from some other career into this, like we used to be teachers or we used to be accountants or something, and this is a second or third career. But I think that you'll find it exciting, just the energy that you get from being around other translators. And a lot of the times we're just alone at home in front of a laptop, or we're the only one in the courtroom who understands our language, and so we can feel kind of isolated. But this is a place to come and let your hair down and relax and be around other people who get you, who understand what it is that you do. We have one person coming at the end, a lady from Earth Day. In case you didn't hear my announcement earlier on, Earth Day has an annual celebration in Austin. It's a big outdoor event, and they're looking for translators and interpreters who'd like to volunteer to support it this year. And we may be involved in some regard as an association. The board members are talking about that. But if you'd like to just go as an individual, they would be happy to have your help with that. So that'll be the last thing today. But first, I'm going to talk about CAT tools and why I feel they are a freelance translator's best friend. And if you work for a company as a translator, you don't even have to hear this because they've already got you using CAT tools. There are no companies left that I know of that don't use CAT tools, but they have now become prevalent enough and inexpensive enough and powerful and simple enough that a lot of freelancers are using them too. And so first, the definition: a CAT tool is a computer-assisted, or some people say computer-aided translation, or there's one other acronym for that, computer-augmented translation. Anyways, it means that the best parts of the human brain and the best parts of the computer are working together to create a translation that's more accurate, more consistent across the entire corpus, and is available more quickly. It may or may not include machine translation. Machine translation is often a component of computer-assisted translation, but that's when the machine does it all by itself. And everybody has used Google Translate, and most of us have mixed feelings about it, but I think it's cool. And every time I update the Google Translate app, it can do new tricks. And it's learning more all the time, and just most recently, I'm studying Russian, so I accidentally set my whole computer to Russian. I didn't mean to. I don't know how it happened, because my Russian's not that good. And so I was trying to set it back, but when all the options are in Russian, it's hard to figure out what you need to click on to revert to the original language. And so I took out Google Translate and set it to Russian to English and turned on the camera. And I don't know if you've seen this, but you can just hold it in front of a language now, and it will translate it live on screen into the other language. And this is set to Russian, so it's not going to do it for you. But as it's hovering there, the new word will appear on the screen. And you can be at a restaurant where the language, it's like a Chinese restaurant, and you can't read the menu, and just hover it over the menu, and it'll tell you kind of, it's not real good quality, but it'll kind of tell you what each item is. And it's just in real time as you move your camera around.
Google Translate?
Google Translate, the Android app, but I'm sure the iPhone app does the same thing.
Do you know if it recognizes the language, or do you have to tell it what language it is?
I have only tried telling it what language it is. I don't know if it can recognize it. For text, it can recognize sometimes and suggest a language, or it'll say, "Are you sure this is Russian? Do you want to translate from Hungarian or something?" And you can tell it if you got the wrong language in there. But that's an advance that we should be aware of, because it is impacting our jobs. I went to my chiropractor this week, and he's like, I'm getting a lot of Spanish-speaking patients who I can't communicate with, so I ordered this thing, and he shows me this thing. It looks kind of like a remote control. It's all silver, and he's like, I tried using this, and you just push the button, and you talk, and it's supposed to say it in Spanish, and then they talk and says it in English, and he paid $50 for it or something. And I said, well, is it working? Is it good? And he says, it sucks. It doesn't understand me, and I don't understand it. And so I was kind of relieved. On one hand, I think it's cool technology, and if it worked, that would open all kinds of opportunities for lots of people, and you can't stop the flow of progress. Probably eventually we're going to get those that are going to work right, like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and the fish in your ear that interprets for you, but the babblefish. But it's not here yet, and I suggested to him maybe telephonic interpretation. If any of you have worked for a telephonic company, that's one good way to get on-demand interpretation without having to hire somebody to come in and be there in person. For something like a chiropractor where he has no way to cover the cost of an on-site interpreter.
Mark, is that still common?
Telephonic?
Telephonic translation?
I think
That's
it's,
what I've been doing for 9 years. So
Yeah.
I can give you the name of the company if you need, because they're always looking for people. I don't think a lot of people actually last 9 years, like, that they really can get you, but I mean, I'm willing to share that piece of information, of course, because they're always looking for all sorts of languages.
good.
And, you can do legal pays more always, in medical and general interpretation all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to share that information.
I worked for 2 years for Language Line.
Okay,
Well,
well, yeah, this
first
is
getting
Language
started.
Services Associates in
Okay.
Corsham, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
States.
And I think there's lots of different companies that do that. Some
Right.
specialize in a certain area or a certain industry.
It is a huge, humongous business, and everybody's always,
And so if you, because of your family situation or your living situation, can't go to a workplace, but you want to interpret, maybe you don't have transportation, telephonic interpretation is a good option. There's different contracts. Mine was 40 hours a week. They would tell you a couple weeks in advance what your shift would be. It changes a little bit, but basically you could say, I want to work mornings, I want to work evenings, I want to work nights.
but that's hourly, right?
And they paid me for 40 hours a week, and I was actually on the phone about 16 hours a week, and then resting in between and getting paid whether or not I was on a call.
Yeah, but I think it's changed a little bit, so it's more like the people that is because there are more Spanish speakers, more
Yeah.
Spanish interpreters, so, our language is different. But I mean, I work by the minute, and you can send your minute or whatever price, but they will go ahead and tell you, oh, if you're gonna charge us that,
Yeah.
we're not gonna give you a Spanish call, that's fine, I take it, I take the risk, sometimes it will be good, sometimes, and you can negotiate that, so it's good. And it's flexible for people who want to go to school or whatever, or retire or whatever.
And for some companies, they offer video remote interpreting as well, which is similar, except you're sitting in front of a webcam and they can see your face.
I don't do that because I have a dog, so, sometimes you can blame it on the customer when you have, three-way call at home, but when you're at home, there's no way.
If the dog's in your lap, you're busted.
It happened to me, I was in Argentina, and they said, was that a dog? No.
Were you in pajamas?
So I said, no way, so that was tough, so just,
Good to know. All right, so first, just by show of hands, who has used at least sometimes CAT tools? Can you just call out the names of the products that you use? Fluency, WordFast, Stratus. Okay, any others? Deja Vu, good. And there are proprietary ones like where a certain company has their own brand, and when you're translating for them, you log into their system and you translate in their system. So they're generic ones that function like the majority that are on the market. I've used WordFast. Today's presentation is mostly about WordFast.
Worked well.
So much for word unity.
We just got the flags. They're great. I love them. I want to keep using them, but we just got to tweak our hanging system. I hope you'll be patient in the meantime. Also, for what? I know that in my case, I translate a lot of college transcripts and birth and marriage certificates, and they come to me as a scanned file that the CAT tool can't read. And so when I'm doing those, I can't use the CAT tool, but if I get, say, a flyer, a website, something that's editable text, then they're useful for that.
I pay
into Word, and then I can use the tool.
What about
The-
the format though?
I mean, it reduces the work by about 2 hours. So usually, if you do it by hand, a birth certificate, it will take you what, about an hour? About an hour maybe? And if you use that, then it will be like 15, 20 minutes.
And then you reformat it or what?
Just reformat really quick.
So for those of you who haven't tried that, Adobe, inside of Adobe Reader has an option called Export PDF. And I think there's an annual fee to use it. It's like
Yes.
$30 a year or something. It's pretty inexpensive. But what they do is you upload it to the cloud, and then they have optical character recognition software that tries to make sense of it. And then you download a Word file. And if it was a nice clean PDF that was like exported directly from Word, it'll nail it and it'll get every word. But if it's something messy with handwriting and rubber stamps and it's kind of crooked and it's been faxed, each of those factors will degrade the quality. So sometimes, I mean, it's a great tool to have in your tool bag. Sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. It's called Export PDF. And they're also, Tristan, where's Tristan?
Yeah.
Converter.
Okay.
I work with that.
Weren't you researching different products that do the same thing?
Yeah, I did. I used one that you were describing, I think, Adobe, for a month. You can get it in different subscriptions. You can get it by month, by year, and I think there's another option as well. And I just got the monthly one because I just wanted to try it, and I liked it. I only used it very, very briefly, and I eventually ended up getting a program called AATIA Fine Reader. And the reason I chose that over that one is because I wanted to just pay the $200 or whatever it was up front at once, whereas the Adobe one's a subscription.
What is it called?
ABBYY, AATIA, Fine Reader. But I mean, there's others that are fine out there as well. And the one that Mark said is good.
The
So
category of software is OCR, Optical
Yeah.
Character Recognition. So if you Google OCR, you can see different options. But the point is that the CAT tool needs to be able to understand the text. It can't just be an image of text. So if you have an image, you have to convert it somehow. Now that might involve converting it and then seeing that there's some typos in there, and then you go in and fix them by hand. And if there's not that many, then that's cost effective. If there's a lot, it might be better just to start from scratch and retype it.
It's good for divorce decrees. As long
Oh yeah, single space, legal pages. Yeah, it's true. I'd just like to know general opinions from people who've used it. If you like it, if it makes a difference, if you tried it and abandoned it because it wasn't working for you, what are your experiences?
I used it once, a couple times, and then I learned that big companies, maybe including mine, the one that I work for as an interpreter, actually use it against the translator because it was originally created or conceived to help and relieve translators in order not to read the words, have a what they call, remind me what's the word for the memory they call it. Right?
TM.
Yeah, the vocabulary and everything, but it ended up that they used it massively to pay less, per word. Besides, going to school for 5 years, they told me that you never translate words, you translate concepts, right? And that's something they pounded for 5 years. So it to me was an ethical dilemma. I really saw that it was actually exploiting translators in a way. Exploiting, that's the word that I mean.
They do. They do it.
Right, so
I
I
work for
just-
LSA and they do it.
Yeah, so that's why.
And I've been doing this for 31 years.
Okay, so is it true, right? Okay, just want to make sure.
But it depends on your experience. You want 20 hours an hour, like Mark was, yes. Obviously, you have been doing tone, I've been doing tone for a long time, but what I'm saying is, Judge, what I'm saying is, I'm judicial, 31 years, we're masters, okay? We've been doing it for a long time. What I'm telling you is, I've been doing tone for a while, and that's what he was telling me, yeah, it doesn't help. But, back and forth, because it doesn't pay enough. It doesn't pay enough.
Yeah.
They pay me $20.
Yeah, but I'm talking about-
Translation.
I'm talking about the
There's no
specific,
translation to do.
well, I'm talking about the specific computer aid, tool.
Right.
That's what it's.
Some companies, some big agencies will say, we'll pay you this much if it's not in the TM, if you have to translate it yourself,
Right.
and then this lower rate if you're recycling old translations, and they break it down like in a chart.
The fuzzy, the less fuzzy, and things like that. Well, that's what, and then I colleagues, I mean, classmates, work, wait, so that was my experience. I'm not
Yeah.
sure about, now, if you're a freelancer, it's different.
Yeah.
Because you said you're.
This is an important issue if you're translating for big agencies. It's kind of beyond the scope of today's presentation. This is more of an introduction. But you may come across that as you get further into working for big agencies. Yes?
For me, it has worked very well because I'm the only translator in the school district. And, I can put my glossaries there. And that way, when I go back, I have to translate something for special education or for dyslexia. So I already choose and I know, and it's consistent,
Yeah.
which is very important.
If you're in this situation, you are the in-house translator,
Yes.
and you're like the only translator, please start using CAT tools.
Of course.
It's really going to help you. There's no reason not to.
Yes.
Because
Thank you.
there's a lot of research behind,
Yeah.
the word, so
Yeah.
that's different. I'm talking about when
Right.
it's used massively, two different things.
So this is, I've tried to simplify it and help you decide if it's worth your time to look into, because it's going to take some investment of time to get into it the first time. CAT's tools probably aren't for you if you're just an interpreter. If you like to translate by hand on paper, I imagine there are still like poetry translators who work that way, or on a typewriter. It's not going to help. If you just hate computers, if you're a Luddite, don't get into this. If for you it's a very spiritual experience to translate and you just do literature and fine art translation, probably not for you. Or if everything that you get is a PDF, a scan, or a fax that's messy, like old historic documents, handwritten, that kind of thing, it's not going to help unless you have somebody retype it over. So I don't know if that applies to you, but if it does, you can just tune out for the rest of this presentation. I feel like most of us do not fall into that category. But if any of these apply to you, then I highly recommend it. If at least some of your translations start out as Word documents, Excel, some other editable format, Publisher, InDesign. If you're open to new technology and techniques, if you want to work faster, if you want to be more competitive, or if you have multiple orders from the same client, such as the school district that you work for, or a major direct client that sends you stuff on a regular basis. In all of these situations, CAT tool will be well worth your investment.
If you work for a major law firm, then you obviously want to make sure you get the same paragraph translated exactly the same word,
Yep.
the same way every time.
Right, because they're just recycling their boilerplate language anyways and reusing it, and if you waste your time thinking of the word each time, killing yourself. So for full disclosure here, I'm not a Luddite, but I'm sort of slow to adopt. I'm not an early adopter. I remember I used to have a Palm Pilot, and when they started making with color screens, I said out loud, this is so stupid. Who would spend extra money on a color screen for their digital assistant? When touchscreen phones came out, the iPhone, I was like, that's ridiculous. That's never going to last. Keyboards down at the bottom of the phone are where it's at. When Google came out, it's like, why do we need another search engine? Yahoo works great. I'm never going to use Google. When YouTube came out, it's like a whole website that's nothing but videos. I don't go to my computer to watch videos. I go to my TV to watch videos. And when Facebook first said, would you like to set us as your home page? I just laughed out loud. I'm not going to be checking Facebook all the time. Maybe once a month I'll see what's going on in there. And then I was proven wrong in every one of these situations. So if you are a late adopter like me, I understand, I get it. And I feel like these are some of the myths that I had to overcome, and maybe some of them apply to you. At first, I thought it's too expensive, I can't afford new software, I've got Word, I can do anything I need to in Word. And I found out you can get them for free, not just trial versions, but full versions. There are free ones available. Hard to learn. I think that I was producing usable, valuable output on my first attempt after about an hour. I watched a YouTube video, I went through their little tutorial, and I started using it, and I was like, oh, this really isn't so hard. There are a couple bugs I had to kind of dig up in the forums and stuff, but after that, it was very quickly productive. They're not just for big in-house corporate translators, though there are more advanced tools that will be good for them that aren't good for a freelancer. We don't need to use the entire suite of options. And aren't CAT tools evil because they're stealing our jobs? They are affecting our jobs. There are certain types of jobs we don't get now that we might have used to get until CAT tools took over the corporate translation industry. But in other ways, they're making our jobs more productive and more efficient. And so if you have a negative emotional reaction, I would just encourage you to give it another shot and see maybe there's something useful in there for
Marco, I'm
you.
sorry, can you go back? What is it that is for free? Travels is for free? No. Talk about this?
The next slide covers your question.
Thank you.
Here we go. So, what brands are available? These are the main ones that you'll probably see ads for up here. All of these are free.
Oh my.
So now you can do your notes, guys.
Yes.
Go ahead and take a picture.
Like in judicial.
And then down here, these are some more like enterprise level that you probably won't run across as a freelancer, but those are other products. And there's new ones coming out all the time. So today we're going to talk about one called WordFast Anywhere, which is free indefinitely. It's not just a trial version.
And I'm sorry, Marco, are you gonna upload this presentation?
For AATIA members, it goes onto the members section of the website.
Okay.
And then you can view it on there. It'll probably be up like in a week or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take a picture.
Take a picture. That's a good idea.
Or we have a picture.
I will wait as long as you need. Tell me if I'm in the picture.
Yes, you are. And you flash.
Make sure you get the flash.
Make sure you get the smile.
If you don't get a picture of this, I learned this information by Googling what are all the cat tools. And this came up. Yes.
So I just started checking, because my workload right now is super tight, so I was checking for other fluency. And just, if everyone to know, you can download Memo Q, first trial month is free, and then from there you go if it's something that you want to do. So that, I'm just gonna do it like for 1 month and see
Yeah, good.
if it is super. Because it's-
You've got to be careful. You've got to be careful because you're going to be investing a lot of hours into learning how to use it. So you're going to be wasting a lot of money if you just try it and then garbage it. So you've got to be more or less in the mindset that you are willing to buy it before you invest the time to learn how to use it in that 1 month trial period. So you've got to be careful.
I'll take that in mind.
All right. So if you're just getting into this, it's kind of overwhelming. Like Miguel said, there's lots of options out there. Where do you start? Which one do you go to first? I don't want to learn one and then have to abandon it. And so these are just some suggestions. You may disagree. If you start with the free version, they all do a lot of the same things. There's bells and whistles that are different, but they have the main ideas, some core functionality. There are free online tutorials for all of them, and you can see, sort of look through the flow, the workflow, and see if it makes sense to you, or if the entry-level tutorial just blows your mind, then that might be like a high-end cat tool that's too complicated. Experiment on it when you're not racing a deadline. I made the mistake of never even trying it until I got this huge order. And I was like, oh no, I have to do 100 pages in a week. I better learn how to use a cat tool. And there's all this pressure to learn it fast. And I end up abandoning it partway through and asking for an extension and going back to Word and just translating it that way. But then afterwards, I was suddenly motivated to figure it out for the next time something like that happened. So try to do it when you're not pressed for time, which is rare. Who sits around the house all day wishing they had something to do? No,
A
but
housewife?
No.
all right.
Okay.
All right.
Let's start.
Don't try to master all the features. They all do more than you need. Like that camera over there. Look at all the buttons on the back of my video camera. I don't use most of those. There's like one button for stop and one button for play, and that's the important one. All the other ones are just bells and whistles. And your cat tool is the same way. Expect it to be kind of frustrating at the beginning, and like you're going to want to quit because this one thing keeps happening and you can't figure it out, and you Googled it and you asked your friend and nobody knew how to fix that thing. If you keep digging, you'll find the answer somewhere, and so just expect it to take a little while to get up and running. Don't get frustrated. My example, I chose a sample text to translate live in front of you. I was going to do it online, but I'm always leery about relying on the internet connection at a conference because invariably it'll drop halfway through when you're trying to show a video or something. And you can see all the trouble I have with technology and cords and stuff. So what I did is in my office, I did it online and then took screenshots. So we can sort of go through it step by step and pretend like we're actually doing it online. And it's also tricky because we have different languages represented here, and we don't want to exclude anybody based on what languages they know. but translation is necessarily one language into another, so there's no way to do it all in English. And so I was like, what text are we all familiar enough with that will recognize it from any language into English? And I thought a nice short text is the Miranda warnings. Because we've all heard on the police giving you your warnings, you have the right to remain silent and all that in movies and stuff. And so I found a Spanish version of that, and please don't get into critiquing the Spanish version because of course there are different ways to say it in Spanish, but just pretend like you don't know Spanish. And we're going to be translating it into English, and you'll at least be familiar enough with the content to know if it's a good translation or not, and I feel like everybody can follow along with that. So, deal? Whenever I'm at a conference where it's just Spanish translators, and I put up any sample translation up there, all the hands go up. I wouldn't say it that way. Like, why are you using that word? But we're not going to go there today, okay? Just pretend like the Spanish is perfect. Everybody on board? Okay. So, this is what the opening screen looks like. You set up an account, you give it your email, you set up a password, it sends you confirmation, just like every other online product. And then I took my Spanish version of the Miranda rights and I cut and pasted them in. If you want, you can also upload it as a Word file. You can upload it from Google Drive, OneDrive, from a URL, whatever. But you get the text in there, and then you hit upload and open, and your next screen looks like this. And the way most of these programs are set up is you'll have language A over here, your source language, and your target language over here. And something that Esther just pointed out that I hadn't thought about is that it's really nice to have them lined up like that, because then you don't have to look from your paper original over to your screen or from your PDF window to your Word window and go back and forth and figure out where you are, which is an easy way to skip lines. You know, if you don't have a finger on this one and a finger on that one, you skip stuff. But it does that for you. Computers are good at doing that. It just picks out a whole sentence or maybe the whole title, a complete phrase, and puts it there. And then over here is where we're going to put the translation just line by line all the way through. And we can, once we get to the bottom, then we export it back to whatever format it started out as. So here's the source text. And on the next screen, what I've done is I've gone up here and hit the Start Next button. There are also keyboard shortcuts that are quicker once you get used to them. But then one sentence at a time, using a machine translation program called MyMemoryTM, it starts translating it. So our first sentence here says whatever in your source language, and then here's the translation that it suggests. So now we have a cat tool, and inside that cat tool is a translation memory, which is in the cloud somewhere, and a machine translation algorithm that is applying that memory and trying to figure out how they think you should probably say it in English. So you have the right to remain silent. That looks good to me. Any objections? That's what they always say on TV, right? Right? Okay. So I'm going to hit the Start Next button, and it'll skip down to the next line. And their suggestions, anything you say can be used and will be used against you in court. Now, I think that's very understandable, but it's kind of awkward. That's not the way I heard it expressed on the shows. And so I'm going to go in, and here on the next slide, you're going to see that I've moved a couple words around. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. That just sounds better to me. And so it's this little window right here is just like a Word window or a notepad window. You just edit it like you normally would. You put in accent marks like you normally would. You can cut and paste out of that window. It's just a regular text window. And in the next line, it's suggesting you have the right to speak with a lawyer and to have a lawyer present to advise you before or during your interrogation. As English speakers, does that sound like what you've heard? Any words there that are a little awkward? You're like, that's not the word I would use. Lawyer. Lawyer is kind of a casual word.
Attorney.
It's more polite to say attorney. Are there any attorneys here?
Counsel.
Are there any attorneys here?
You prefer attorney?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I prefer attorney.
You mean? Were you going to say? Yeah. Okay, so I did too. And so I went in and I changed it to attorney and attorney. And then I thought, to advise you, I like counsel. So you may disagree, but I changed advise to counsel. And then everything else looked good, except for interrogation. For me, I was in the military, and I always think Guantanamo Bay when I hear interrogation. It sounds very... Is the little red light back on? Okay. We are trying out this year, recording all of the presentations and putting them on our AATIA YouTube channel, because we have members who are out of state and can't come, and they've asked us to prepare that. So we'll see if it works. Fingers crossed. Technology. when this really comes home, what the power of CAT tools is when you look at a dollar amount. So I'm not allowed to suggest how much you charge for your translation, just a little disclaimer here. There's all this scandal with the Federal Trade Commission, we won't get into that. But let's say hypothetically, you charge $15 for that one paragraph translation, and without CAT tools, you could be making $60 an hour, theoretically, if you had a steady flow of these orders coming in. None of us have a steady flow of orders coming in, but if you did. And with the CAT tool, because you save a third of the time, then you would be making $90 an hour for the same effort. Order number 2, you make the exact same amount without the CAT tool, but with the CAT tool, because it's so much faster, you make $450 an hour. I want to make $450 an hour. I want to make it 40 hours a week. That's not going to happen. But for these little bursts of productive activity, they are very lucrative bursts. Liliana, can you tell me in translation for educational materials, do you use CAT tools?
No. I mean, I just started this job a month ago, but no.
How about for the
I think a lot
statesman?
of it is adaptation. Adaptation, and so it's not straight translation. You have to create a new lesson and use different resources, and so it wouldn't work.
So some of it is cultural adaptation, ideas that are common in the English-speaking culture that aren't in the Spanish-speaking culture.
Yeah, the examples and the names.
It's more
So
like
there's
localization.
too many variables. And then
localization.
also for literature, I've never used it.
I wouldn't use it for literature either.
Because
What-
there's not a lot of repetition. Each text is different.
Yeah. How about in the media? For ahora sí.
Either.
No. Is anybody here from a journalistic background?
Yeah, from 1990, 80, 86.
Pre-CAT
when
tools?
internet, yeah.
Yeah.
The world changed so much after the internet. I mean, literally. so
Yes.
much.
No arguments there.
Yeah. And
So-
it's changing because as you saying they're free. When I started experiencing this thing, it was super expensive.
Yeah.
Super expensive. And that's why my reluctance to engage in that.
Yeah.
Because I was in South America back then, so even more expensive.
So the good news is the prices have come
That's
down.
wonderful. And for free, you said.
Yeah.
I have a question, like, now that I was told you earlier, if I want to start a new software, why do I do it on my own? Because they're recyclable, and do you transfer them to the new one, or?
I'm so glad you asked. Excellent question. Are you going to answer it?
No.
Different question? Okay.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes.
I think we have the same question. No,
Um,
go ahead and ask again.
If I'm jumping in now, if I'm jumping into CAT now and I have all these old files of stuff that I've translated before, can I get anything out of them or are they just lost forever? The answer is something called alignment. Write that down. Alignment means analyzing pairs of documents that you've already done and matching them up and figuring out which sentences correspond. Sorry?
There's also a way to export a translation memory into a sort of a more general compatible format. TMX is the general exchange, so that you can put your proprietary version into this TMX and import it into the new software so that you can use them across platforms.
Yeah.
There is some cross-platform.
So if you start with WordFast and then you convert to Trados, for example, you can take your TMs with you. You don't lose them. It's not like
So let's say I have a Word document, and then I could save as, and then you know how on the bottom it says several to change it, I convert it to TXT and then.
So if it's a Word file, that's different. If you have, for example, you already have the translation memory that you built up, for example, I've got for 6 years of work. If I wanted to then switch to a different software, I've currently got all my things and products in that file format. I can convert it to a different file format that will allow me to import it into another so that I don't lose that body of work that I've got saved in my translation. But if you've got two Word documents, for example, that's when alignment is useful.
so. There are different formats that translation memories can come in, but you can convert them, you can save them, And the way you mine, it's sort of like a gold mine, all of your old translations, because you know those are good, you did them yourself. The way that you make use of them is you upload a whole bunch of them, or you put them into your desktop program, and it will recommend which ones correspond based on the file name and the content, and then it'll have you sort of scan down the page and confirm, yep, those are lined up correctly, and then maybe you'll see something where like, it was 2 sentences in the English, but in the Spanish you combine it into 1 sentence, and it's confused and it doesn't know they line up, then you manually line those up and say, oh, these are actually the same sentence, they go together. And once you've gone all the way through, you click Add to my translation memory, and it's now part of the great brain of content that you can draw from instantly. And then as you're going through a translation, maybe, like real often I'll say, I know I had this word, this obscure term, I remember years ago I looked it up, but it took me a long time to find it, I don't remember where I found it, and I just go to my little TM window down at the bottom and I type the term, and it scans through all that stuff instantly, and it pops up with a sentence and says, oh, here's a sentence in the original, and here's how you translated before. And so it's like you have your own search engine for your old content, which is really powerful.
And you might be able to use the whole letter,
Yeah.
not just that one word.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. One of our accounts at my company is with the State Bar of Texas, and people will complain about attorneys who deal with their clients in a foreign language, and the client feels that they've been mistreated, and so they file a complaint. And real often, they will submit not only their complaint, but also the contract that they signed with the attorney. And if it's a contract in a foreign language, we have to translate that back into English so that the state bar can review it and figure out, was there something in the contract that was inappropriate? Did they promise something that they didn't actually deliver? That kind of thing. And if there's, every once in a while, there will be an attorney who gets multiple complaints in the course of a year because of whatever's going on in their life. They're not keeping the deal with their clients. And so we get those contracts over and over and over again, but after we translate the first one, then we have it living there in our translation memory, and we have to go through and make sure that it hasn't changed because there might be different versions, and we're responsible for making sure it corresponds. But if the whole 5-page contract is already there, what a relief to not have to translate it
Or if
again.
you only have to do minor adjustments,
Yeah.
you've got 90% of your contract already translated.
Right.
And again, it's time, I think the point here is, or the question is, time. You just need to save time. I mean, you because you have a lot of flow of work, but sometimes like you say, is it worth it, to invest? Unless the company invests for it. That's different. But again, they use it to pay by the word and not pay you already for the terms that you have in the memory. That was my attachment to it.
Yeah.
They gave me the memory and they would pay only for those words,
I turned those offers down.
Well, no, I never, I did it once here, and that's it. I'd rather be in the call center taking.
Yeah, don't become a cog in the machine. Don't let them treat you like
Well,
another
that's what it
robot.
is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your customers are direct customers, then the fact that you have 99% of that contract already translated,
Right.
your customer doesn't have to know that.
Right.
Your customer will still pay you for 1,000 words.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I have a comment to make. As I mentioned earlier today, I'm retired medical translator for 35, 40 years. Not interpreter, but medical translator. And I went from all levels, kind of from very short to patient history. The machines that you find in the hospitals nowadays, X-ray machines, CAT scans, everything, all the charts and everything. So I ran into the problem that you have between, especially in medical office translations, it starts with a patient history. Now, we also have it, of course, in the hospitals as well. And the medical history is determined huge amount by what the patient says. And a good nurse or assistant will